Inazuma 11 Go is the fourth Inazuma 11 game, and also the one fans agree is the worst. While that may be true, it introduced many features and quality of life improvements that made the series better, in my opinion. In this video, I want to take a look back at this game and see if it really deserves the title of worst Inazuma 11 game, or if it's a hidden gem that's been overlooked by the majority of fans.
Inazuma 11 Go!
Okay, first off, what did they change with this game? Well, the main thing, of course, is fighting spirits. You can have up to 3 fighting spirits active at once, and they basically just make your players a lot stronger. But each spirit also has its own unique special move, which uses FSP, a combination of FP and TP for spirits to use. The drawback here is that any normal special moves a player may have cannot be used while the spirit is active. So in order to use them again, you would have to use up all of the spirit's FP, which burns it out and removes it from the pitch. Or just manually deactivate them, which is an option. Personally, I really like the idea of fighting spirits, as it's similar in style to moves like March in the Hand and Fireball Storm from the original trilogy, which are some of my favourites. But in practice, it's not a very well thought out mechanic. The inclusion of fighting spirits basically means unless you have a spirit out, you can't stop an opponent's spirit and vice versa. It's kind of like Z-moves in Pokemon Gen 7, where you can use this overpowered mechanic anytime and win the interaction effortlessly. Overall, fighting spirits are okay, but it wasn't really necessary, and future gimmicks like Mix and Match and Armor Fire blow fighting spirits out of the water. Also, spirit linking and spirit bonding. Spirit linking is just the ability to bring out a spirit for a second time by using the TP of all members on the team. Usually a spirit can only be brought out once. Spirit bonding is very underutilized, but it's like a kind of spirit fusion, where if certain spirits are active, they can fuse into one super powerful spirit. These include Griffin, which can be summoned by fusing Arch Pegasus, Lancelot, and Maestro, and also Arthur, which requires White Wyvern and Black Butcher to summon. Also, for this game only, arena hazards are a thing. We've got sand that pulls you down or up the pitch. Okay. Gusts of wind that shoot you into the air. The pitch just fucking falling apart, and pinball. So yeah, I understand why they didn't come back. Other small things include being able to customize all of a player's moves, as opposed to just the 2 extra slots. Random encounters now being visible in the overworld, a much welcome addition to any RPG. And there's also a new element, Void. It's basically just a null element that doesn't get affected by strengths or weaknesses. Another small change, but a welcome one, is that players no longer have to be close to the goal to change shots. They can be at any distance, which is useful because pulling them off in Inazuma 11-3 was really difficult, and most of the time just caused you to go offside. The worst addition, in my opinion, has to be the dreaded PAL packing. This is Go 1's recruiting system, and it is so obnoxious. It takes so long to get specific characters, and it makes me want to stop breathing. Basically, there are up to 4 conditions that have to be met, and then you can buy the player with friendship points. It doesn't sound that bad until you realise you have to go through so many players to get the ones you want. It's insane. Let's take Drake and Yale, for example. In order to get him, you first need Colby Columbia. But in order to get him, you need Caesar Cornell. But in order to get him, you need Precious Cryan, a random scout where you will spend hours looking around the entire game to find, because it doesn't tell you where to find her. She's found in Windy Path, by the way. Now do you see why power packing is bad? And of course every Go game has power packing because it's such a fun game mechanic. Some characters also require rare items found completely randomly from competition routes, so yeah, it's bad. It's not good. Next, the story. The overall tone of Go 1's story is quite different to the rest of the series, and I think most people don't like that, but I do a lot. The premise is that after Inazuma National's victory in the Football Frontier International, football has become more popular than ever, and this turns out to be a bad thing. The success of schools and the students attending them is reliant solely on the skill of their football clubs, which causes schools with weak clubs to crumble and collapse. In order to combat this, an organisation called Fifth Sector is formed, run by the mysterious Alex Zabel. Definitely not Axel Ways. They claim that football should be enjoyed equally by all, which includes wins and losses. Essentially, they come up with final scores for all official matches and turn football into a stage sport where nobody gets to play how they want, kind of like WWE. The game's protagonist, Arian Sherwin, joins Raimon's team unaware about Fifth Sector's doing, but through his sheer love and passion for the beautiful game, eventually encourages the team to start a revolution. So they enter the Saints Way tournament to rebel against Fifth Sector and restore football to how it once was. This game has the most voice acting of any Inazuma 11 game. I know that doesn't necessarily make a game better or worse, but it's just so cool how much they managed to put in the game. The reason I think most people don't like the story of Go On is because of how serious it is compared to the goofy nature of the other game's plot. But I think it's a really nice breath of fresh air, and slowly gaining hope as you challenge Fifth Sector's rules and the teams that abide by them feels so cool. Something related to the story that I must talk about are the teams you face. Sadly, Go On has easily the weakest teams of the series. There are some gems like Universal, Zero, and Mount Olympus, but then there's teams like Ivy Selective. Who? Seriously, I forgot about this team till I started making this video. They're just so boring and forgettable. A lot of other teams had this problem as well, like Lunar Sea, Milky Way Charter, and even the final boss team, Dragon Link. Like, there's just no theme here. They're just random players thrown together, and they don't even have their own interesting moves. Everything apart from Quentin and Dragon Link are so boring. They all have white hair. Like, come on. This is the final boss. Mount Olympus is so much better than Dragon Link, but no. You only get to go against them for a half, 30 minutes of in-game time. Another problem is that there are so few special moves in Go On. I get that it's a new engine and all, but I feel like almost every team shares the same moves, especially in extra competition routes. And some even use what are supposed to be signature moves of main characters. Like, you see Arian's Easy Breezy and Ricardo's Hey Presto so much on random scouts, and it's kind of weird. On a more positive note, the game's music is so good. The fully orchestrated soundtrack is again quite different from what the series had done in the past, but I think Go On is a contender for the game with the best music, honestly. Here are some of my favourites. The only thing left to talk about now is postgame. The competition routes in this game are pretty boring due to reasons I discussed earlier, but the actual meat of the post-game is quite good. First off, depending on which version you are playing, you can face off against Southern Claw or Northern Fang. There's nothing too special about them, but it is a fun time. The main part of the post-game is the Eternal Light, Ancient Dark, and Zero matches, which feature voice acting, which literally no other Inazuma 11 post-game team has for some reason. Like in Team Ogre Attacks, there are a few cutscenes and voice lines throughout the story with Ogre, but then when you actually fight them in the post-game, there's none of that, and it feels really rushed. But anyway, they're very fun and challenging fights with interesting players, and also Gus Martin, so you know it's good. The only problem is that to fight Zero, you need to beat Eternal Light in Go Light and Ancient Dark in Go Shadow, and link the two versions, which means playing through both, which most people will not do, because it's not very fun. Luckily, if you have a hacked 3DS, you can use a program to link both versions, which is what I did, but it's still kind of an annoying game design. And that's all there is to talk about, really. Overall, I think Go 1 is underrated in story, design, and music, among other things. But the actual gameplay is where it falls flat, with its very few special moves and unique teams. It's definitely worth playing, of course, and I really enjoy its story, but you probably won't spend much time in the post-game like you could with 3 or Chrono Stones. Good night, don't do drugs. I can never think of something interesting to say anymore. Bye. Fighting spirits are okay, but I wasn't really... In order to combat this, an organisation called Fifth Sector is formed by the mysterious... Like in Team Ogre Attacks, there are very few... I can't speak. And with its very few...